Welcome to my YouTube channel Wise Whispers, where silence speaks.
The Whisper That Saved My Home. My name is Stephen, and I am 62 years old. I have lived long enough to know that life rarely warns you before it changes forever. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like a soft whisper in the dark. Other times it comes from the mouth of a child who doesn't even understand the weight of what they are saying. And that is exactly how my world began to crumble and rebuild on one ordinary Sunday afternoon. The Whisper. It was late afternoon when my 6-year-old grandson Oliver came running into my living room. I was sitting in my old armchair near the window, the same chair my wife used to complain about because she said it was too worn out. The sunlight fell across the wooden floor and the house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Then Oliver tugged gently on my sleeve. "Grandpa," he whispered. I looked down at him and smiled. His blonde hair was messy and he held his favorite toy truck in one hand. "Yes, buddy?" I asked. He looked over his shoulder toward the hallway, as if making sure no one was listening. Then he leaned closer and said something that made my heart stop. "Grandpa, I heard my mom planning to take your house." For a moment I thought I must have misheard him. "What do you mean, Oliver?" I asked softly. He frowned, trying to remember. "Mom was talking on the phone. She said when you move to the nursing home, the house will be hers, and Uncle Ryan said they need to hurry before you change your will." The room suddenly felt colder. I forced a small smile so Oliver wouldn't see the shock on my face. "Thank you for telling me, buddy," I said gently. He nodded seriously. "I don't want you to leave your house, Grandpa." Neither did I. My home. This house wasn't just a building. It was 40 years of memories. I bought it when I was 27 years old. Back then, it was small and needed repairs, but my wife Margaret loved it the moment she saw the big oak tree in the yard. "We'll grow old here," she said. And we almost did. Margaret passed away 5 years ago after a long illness. Since then, the house had been quieter, lonelier, but it was still home. My son Daniel and his wife Laura had moved in with me a year earlier. They said it would help me since I was getting older. At the time, I believed them. I thought it was love. Now I wasn't so sure. Doubt. That night I couldn't sleep. Oliver's words kept repeating in my mind. "Take your house before you change your will." I had written my will years ago, leaving the house equally to Daniel and my daughter Emily. But Emily lived across the country and rarely visited. Daniel, however, was here every day. Had I been blind? Around midnight, I walked quietly down the hallway for a glass of water. That's when I heard voices from the kitchen. "Laura and Daniel." "He's getting older," Laura whispered. "We just need him to agree to assisted living." Daniel sighed. "He won't go willingly." Laura replied coldly. "Then we convince him the house is too much for him. Once he moves out, we sell it." I froze in the hallway. Every word hit like a hammer. Daniel hesitated. "And the wills?" Laura laughed softly. "Once the house is sold, it won't matter." I quietly returned to my room. Sleep never came. A plan. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table pretending nothing had happened. Laura smiled sweetly as she poured coffee. "Stephen, have you thought about moving somewhere smaller, maybe a retirement community?" There it was. Too fast. Too obvious. I smiled calmly. "Actually," I said, "I've been thinking about the future." Daniel looked interested. "Oh. Yes," I said slowly, "I'm planning to update my will." Laura's eyes lit up for just a second. "That's a good idea," she said quickly. I nodded. Yes, very important. But what they didn't know was that I had already made a decision. And it started with a phone call. "Emily." I called my daughter Emily that afternoon. She answered with surprise. "Dad, is everything okay?" I told her everything. The silence on the phone lasted several seconds. Then she spoke softly. "Dad, I'm so sorry." "It's not your fault," I said. "But it is my problem," she replied firmly, "and I'm coming to visit." 3 days later, Emily arrived. She hugged me longer than she ever had before. "I should have visited more," she said quietly. I smiled. "You're here now." The lawyer. The next step was simple. Emily drove me to my lawyer's office. Mr. Carter had handled my legal affairs for 20 years. When I explained the situation, he nodded thoughtfully. "Stephen," he said, "you have every right to protect your property." I leaned forward. "I want to make a change." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of change?" I took a deep breath. "The house will no longer go to Daniel." Emily looked surprised. "Dad, are you sure?" I nodded slowly. "Yes." Mr. Carter waited. "So who will inherit it?" I smiled faintly. "My grandson, Oliver." 6-year-old Oliver had no idea he had just changed the course of our family's future. I decided the house would be placed in a trust for him. No one could sell it. No one could take it. And until he turned 25, the house would remain protected. Daniel and Laura would never control it. Mr. Carter finalized the documents. When it was done, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The dinner. That evening we all sat at the dinner table. Daniel's Laura, Emily, little Oliver, and me. The atmosphere was tense. Finally I cleared my throat. "I have some news." Laura leaned forward eagerly. "Yes. I updated my will today." Daniel nodded. "That's good, Dad." I looked directly at him. "The house will stay in the family." Laura smiled. "That's wonderful." I continued. "But it will belong to Oliver." Silence. Daniel blinked. "What?" Laura's smile disappeared instantly. "You gave the house to a 6-year-old. "Yes," I said calmly. "It will be protected in a trust until he's older." Laura's voice became sharp. "So we get nothing." I looked at her steadily. "You already have a home." Daniel looked uncomfortable. "Dad, this seems extreme." I leaned back in my chair. "No, son, what's extreme is trying to push your father out of his own home." The room went completely silent. Laura's face turned pale. "Where did you hear that?" I smiled gently. "Children hear more than adults think." Oliver looked confused. Emily squeezed my hand under the table. The aftermath. 2 weeks later, Daniel and Laura moved out. They said they needed space. Maybe they did. The house became quiet again. But it wasn't lonely anymore. Emily visited more often. And Oliver still came every weekend. One evening he sat beside me under the old oak tree. "Grandpa." "Yes, buddy. Are you still staying here forever?" I looked at the house, the tree, and the sunset behind it. "Yes," I said. "This is still my home." He smiled. "Good." The moral. Life teaches us many lessons, but one of the hardest is this. Not everyone who stands close to you truly stands with you. Sometimes the people we trust the most forget the love that built the life they now enjoy. But truth has a strange way of revealing itself, often through the most innocent voices. And sometimes, the smallest whisper from a child can save everything. Because in the end, family is not defined by inheritance or property. Family is defined by loyalty, honesty, and love. And thanks to my grandson Oliver, I learned exactly who in my family still had those things. And who never truly did.